Hey, John, look at you, looking the same.
Hey,
Uh,
Godfrey.
the
camera looks a little dirty. We'll clean that too. We'll there we go. So you guys can see. All right.
Okay, John, here
There you
we are.
go. Here we are. I'm happy to see you.
Happy to see you again. Been many times we've done this, John.
It's true. I feel I feel blessed and grateful that you keep saying yes.
Ah, 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 ah.
Congratulations on the new movie. You talked about that for a long time,
A
and
long time.
here it is.
No, it took a long time, 9.5 years. 8 years in this room and a year and a half in Red Hook. And it all came together. So I couldn't be happier. And it will now, it appears, we can't say this yet, but maybe when you put it on, it'll be announced. The Museum of Modern Art will release it on September the 26th as a work of art, as the New York Film Festival is going on, and we're not invited to any festivals. And Koyaanisqatsi will play the next night. So that's really, everybody's quite excited about that.
That is so perfect.
That's pretty perfect.
That is great. Wait, but you just said you're not invited to any film festivals.
Never, not even Telluride on the 40th anniversary of Koyaanisqatsi. So I don't think about that. It's like an imprimatur not to be invited, and that the Museum of Modern Art wants to take it as an art piece is music to my ears. Also, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists will release it as their right brain clock in June in New York.
That's really interesting
That's very interesting. It's off the pages of cinema into the headlines.
because, like all of your films, there is such beauty and such gratitude for life, and there's such alarm and concern about what we're doing to the planet with weapons and technology. Yeah.
No, that's yeah. And it the reason this film was designed, we're on tape now, right? We're
Yes.
talking. This film is designed for your reptilian brain. Um, the reptilian brain is our oldest stem, our oldest connection to nature. It's older than the 200 to 300,000 years that humans were finally present. And it controls the right and left hemisphere. It's like the dark of space, 90% of which we know nothing about. It's the dark, whatever you want to call it, the Ungrun, if you're in German. It's something, it's the vivid unknown. We don't even know if it's material. And that's the same thing for ourselves. As above, so below. We have not only a consciousness and unconsciousness, but a subconsciousness that is very active for many of us 1/3 of the time of our life in dream state. It's where it's not rational, it's real in a way that is dealing with who we are, the soul that we have. And it's in a manner that's at once linear and non-linear, clear and obscure or ambiguous all at the same time. So it leaves you not with answering the question, but with raising a question about what's going on. And children, for me, are a child today will have heard and seen in one day more than a kid in the Middle Ages would have seen in a lifetime.
Mhm.
It's that kind of clarity that's going on. So they're bought and sold as you and I are speaking now through Social Security numbers, through the screen of AI. AI is merely the shimmer. that hides the real intention of corporations and governments, people with an enormous amount of money that use it to, they want to control it, like Illich says, for any radical monopoly like healthcare or schooling. Oh, well, those will help us. But the price we pay for that help is total control, a radical monopoly of education, of the life, of energy, of everything, the environment. So it's an intense time, and children are aware of this. And this film um, is an anarchic comedic piece. It's not a fairy tale. Fairy tales have happy endings. I read a zillion of them with Dia Ray Jimenez, who's from the area that you're in. I'll show you Dia Ray, my colleague now of what, 50 something years. He's from Silicon Valley area. He does all the research for anything I do. He's my alter ego. I said, "Oh, let's make a movie once within a time." He said, "Are you crazy?" Not one. I said, "Once upon a time." He says, "No, once within a time."
Mm.
So they're what, 412 images in 51 minutes, 3 seconds. Art should be an infliction. It's not just a pretty picture of bowls, and it's a picture. It should pierce the boil. It should be a purgation, and that's how we looked at it for these kids. So these kids are not in a fairy tale with a happy ending. They're in a fantasy of the real, or a baudic tale where there's not a happy ending but a resolute beginning. And so the world that we live in is not a world that's going to be inherited by children. It is their world right now. They are the people that see it, and they are the people that are doing things. They're
Mm.
dropping out of our world like flies. The United States is, how do I say it, with all its power, more dangerous than ever because it's losing its role of empire all over the planet. Money, money, money. Earth, air, water, fire, money. Big. I mean, when Iran and Saudi Arabia become bedfellows, remember, this is not about liking someone. Countries only have interests, and our interest is not serving the day. So there's so many bad guys, we can say Putin's the worst, and certainly he's not a good guy. He's horrible, but he's just one of many, many flies in the ointment of AI and corporations and buying and selling of everything. Our security as well, for profit, money.
This movie, like all your movies, uh, but this one in particular has a lot of layers and layers of ideas, but also the imagery is very layered. And I think this was the first movie that you filmed in a studio with actors. That was part of what was different. Um, you're also reminding me that when I took astronomy and they're telling me that you should trust all the information we're giving you as being accurate and scientific. And 90% of the universe, we have no idea what it is or what the element is. Um, the feature of children in your movies and I and seeing elements of previous movies in Once Within a Time. There's images of Triska the gorilla. There's images that remind me of Evidence, with the children being present and viewing the world around them with astonishment. And even, of course, elements of your earliest work with the ACLU and anti-surveillance stuff with barcodes coming down behind people during the film. And I, I have to say, it's amazing seeing these two characters who are caged, their heads are caged
Yeah,
in
yeah,
digitalness, and
right.
this sort of terrible yellow brick road type path, but made out of cell phones.
Right, right. So let me say this. Um, there's a word rebus. When your language no longer describes the world you live in, the Chinese proverb says the most important thing we can do in times of maximum social crisis is to rename the world we live in. To rename the world we live in now, as Wittgenstein says, the limit of my language is the limit of my world. We see the world through language. You'll be amazed at what the ear may see. The ear sees an enormous amount. So rebus means not by word, but by object, by deed, by action do we rename the world. And we begin with our original language, the lingua franca, as it were, of body language, facial expression, eye behavior. The alphabet is the weather, it's the stars at night. The stars of the past are our present. The past is our present. That's how incredible this universe is. It's not a universe of chaos as we're told to believe in Los Alamos and Silicon Valley and all the institutes. It's a that's a to me a ruse for complexity. The real name is complexity. And that's something that's the vivid unknown. We have to be able to deal with that. So to get back now to all these complexities in the film, there are 412 images, each one in terms of like the image is made up of the oral and the visual. One without the other is like a dawn without the day. They're made up of 33 degrees of images for each of the 412. So you can't possibly see them all, but they see you. They remember you. If you forget them, they remember you. And they were done digitally hand painted, each frame digitally hand painted. So there's differentiation. It's a film that could have been made in 1900 about once within a time, 2022, 2023. So when I first did Koyaanisqatsi, I only did that because, and I'm Koyaanisqatsi got me going. I mean, it's the mothership for me. But I did it in a manner that I didn't know how to do the film I wanted to do. I just come out of working with street gangs, and I was heavily influenced by Buñuel's Los Olvidados, which could have been made in the barrios of Santa Fe. And I wanted to make a film, but without words, but that was had actors and was articulate. I didn't know how to do it. So 40 years later, it's on my mind forever. Anima Mundi was a big move in that direction, that I realized that if I use kids not as actors, because there are plenty in New York, but as authentic kids, kids whose the world has not been born into their mind at birth yet, not kids being puffered out by their mothers to make money. So for 141 days, I played with John Kane, my co-director, with these children, and they had authentic response. They were from all over the world. The same thing with the crew, from all over the world, many of them illegal. Literally, I don't want to name the countries, but literally everywhere. The average age, 27, the gizmos, part of who they are. I'm able to conceive this, talk about it, give an idea, as it were, provide the creative semen, but they are the womb. They have to realize this project, their average age of 27 is the age of the Challenger crew. They're born into this world. So they're part of that crew, and they could create everything. We, in Red Hook, facing the Statue of Liberty on an old jetty made for the Civil War, we've created the largest virtual screen in the world of 100 feet high, 100 feet deep, 100 feet wide. and you could put the Sistine Chapel in about 30% of it, and all of that done in Red Hook. And it was so it was an opportunity. I've always wanted to work with actors. Here I've done all these films, most of which people haven't seen, certainly much of the footage, and I've used some of it you've seen before, and others you haven't seen, except for one shot. Everything was in the arsenal, as it were, or the what do you call it? The gold mine we had of images that people paid a fortune for and no one saw. So those became implicated in everything. It's a kiddie katsy. It's for kiddies. And you have to, it's anarchic, so they have to see bright colors, but they know what's behind them. They know what's going on with Apple. It has to be funny because funny is who we are. What Baudelaire says, genius is childhood recovered. This is aimed with children for all ages, the child within you and me. And it's an autodidactic experience. You put a frame around something, we all conjure a meaning. We don't tell you what to think, but it's as narrative can be. It's linear, non-linear, same time. It's clear and ambiguous at the same time, leaves you with the question.
Mm.
Now, I'm saying an awful lot for a film without words. It's all about breath. Breath precedes Breath is what gives us the power of word. And in the beginning was the Big Bang. It's the breath, it's the sound that creates. That's why music is so important. It's the rhythm of life. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. My own opinion, they're just a couple of handfuls of stories ever for human beings. It's not the story, it's the storyteller. That's what makes the difference. Any story you could say is boring, but its storyteller can make it hilariously clear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Godfrey, you just mentioned the music and how important music is, and Philip Glass has always made music for your films, and his music for Once Within a Time is really beautiful. And there's music by other people in this film too, including his son. I didn't even know. Is
Right.
Cameron maybe 17 or 18 years old?
No,
And
he was
tell me also
19.
about there's other really remarkable, beautiful chanting and other music in the film too.
So let me go on. In all the films I've done with Philip, any any effect other than the composition was a special effect. Okay. And I accepted that. It was important. I told Philip for this film, which he agreed to immediately because we're connected. I said, we're going to do the score the way we know. We're going to do the composition the way we normally do. I give him a form, talk about emotion, instruments, and then he sits down and writes. Okay, so we did that, and I'm very happy with that. So I said, whenever you do piano, we want to hear calliope now because it changes the tonality of things. It sounds like the Good Humor Man. He was on, but I said, I want you to give me the score, not the composition. We do the composition, but give me and my young crew the score. So we're able to put in there errant sounds, speaking in tongues, other voices from the 19th century, um, um, Mike, Mike Tyson speaking Tyson jazz with some of the best jazz performers. Suzanne Dyham, who you can never write for, you have to conjure it with her. She's the lady, the muse with the crown of roots. All of that was achievable, and it produced a connection to the reptilian brain, to the non-rational yet who we are brain, the black of space, the subterranean zone. All of that was implicated in us taking over the score so that the score sticks in your head. I'm sure you know this. Liberty, liberty, liberty. You hear it on TV, every jingle. Well, let me mention this. this is quite a little story. I don't know what you know about the Dies Irae. You know, the Dies Irae means, it's going to be very hard times. It's the time of reckoning. It's one of the oldest four notes ever recorded. It was done by monks in the early Middle Ages, and it's part of the liturgy for the dead called the Dies Irae. Dies irae, dies ira, solve sancte patrina, solve sanctorum unissima. I learned that at 14 as a young brother. Philip, when he left Juilliard and went to Paris with Boulanger, gave him his tutor. She said, now you'll learn the most magic four notes ever written, the Dies Irae. I'm at 14. He's at 19 learning it. And I wanted to do an opera with him years ago on the Dies Irae. And he got Kubrick used it for the beginning of The Shining. It's in adverts everywhere. It's in movies. Every famous composer in the world has done their version of it. But Philip and I did a version, or Philip did a version where there is no their version of that's not uh, Vivaldi's version or Verdi that's all great. It's exactly the same notation, but with children from Harlem singing. So it makes it special, or with a foghorn playing it in another register as the big monster appears. So I couldn't, that all these things are somehow connected. How, I don't know.
It's almost cliche now to say we're living in a difficult time. It's almost a given. And some spiritual teachings and cultures, uh, I hear people pointing to quite often, like, this is the Kali Yuga, this is the hardest time to be alive on planet Earth ever. Um, I'm curious what you think about that generally. And also, a couple of other things that are just maybe not so connected, and you can choose whatever you want to address. I'm curious about how you chose Mike Tyson to be in the movie and his character. And
Right.
also, the very end of the movie, you have this quote in all these languages, which is addressing my initial point. Like, where are we now on planet Earth? This quote that you end the movie with, there's two quotes you end the movie with. Uh, the first one is, which age is this, the sunset or the dawn? And
Now
then,
that's not a quote. That's my comment.
oh, okay.
The
But the
second one
next
is a
the
quote.
next one is a quote from the very famous philosopher Homer Simpson, who
That's right.
who says, "I'm not normally a praying man, but if you're up there, please save me, Superman."
There you go. So let me start where you started. You said it was almost cliche. Let me be clear. The reasons cliches are so important is there's profundity in cliche. So, for example, our language, I said, no longer describes the world. We're using metaphors now to describe the world. So we see the world hanging by a string from the cloud. That's, we're not saying it's like that. We're saying it is that, the Kali Yuga. So our language has lost its profundity. We're at birth, the world is born into our minds at birth. And that's what we have to be aware, or that's what I think we have to be aware of. As for Mike Tyson, when I decided I wanted Mike Tyson, which was no decision at all, I knew that a few years ago. I saw him on a thing that Spike Lee did on off Broadway. The guy's a genius, okay? stoned as can be. Everybody thought I'm stoned as can be. Gee, these are two stoners. Forget it, Godfrey. He's a criminal. He's a rapist. He's had over 500 convictions and blah. I said even perfect because he's a criminal to fight criminals. He's like me. I'm homeless to have children. Have them in all the films, or I could never have my own. It would be too much. So I approached him, kind of drove him crazy through his manager. His manager, I got a invitation. Would you please come with another person to the De Niro restaurant in Lower Manhattan? Mike wants to see you. So I sat down with Mike. He had his mafiosa guy there with a long gun. Paul Herman, who died since, who's in every mafia movie with the dark sunglasses. I had my apprentice, 6'6" Nigerian, 280 pounds, smiling man that got Mike's big attention, and John Kane, my co-director. So he said, speak to me. I gave him a half hour of complete subterranean talk, which he understood. He says, okay, mother. His wife was over there. His daughter was over there. He says, let's go have a dinner now. De Niro paid for the dinner. We got on. He showed up another month later with his Louis Vuitton case and his dope and didn't miss it. Didn't miss a beat the whole time. Now, the backstory is also, but not the reason, but just coincidentally, Uncle Ed, who you don't know, is the guy that put him in touch with Jake DeMata. And the guys that went to school with him all work in the building that I work in. So here he shows up and all these black dudes that knew him before he knew him. So we had a great, great time. It was the meant to be. And he didn't miss a beat, man. So I'm so fortunate to have him. And he gets everybody's attention, believe me.
Mm-hmm.
That's Mike Tyson. People become conscious then.
Mm-hmm. Say a little bit about his character and the choice to make his speaking jazz music.
His body language spoke as loud as the jazz. I didn't want him to be speaking in a language because then only this can go out all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
all over the world. The two largest languages on the planet are Chinese, which is pictographic, and English, which is phonic. So in English, you could say good morning, or you could say good morning, and it has a whole other meaning. In Chinese, you could say good morning in 30 different ways, depending on how you use your finger, your eye, side of your head, what time of day, all of that. We have a tremendous leeway within our language. So he was communicative. He was telling those kids, it looks all great. And then he shows them the whole thing is coming down and he scares them, but then he rallies them to follow him into the yellow brick road of computers and to trash it and to leap out into the audience, the vivid unknown, recreating their future. This is not the Lord of the Flies of nihilism. It goes beyond nihilistic to recreate your own world, a resolute beginning. So we're not trying to start a movement, but I do feel that this film speaks to what people feel but have not been able to articulate. I've had everybody from the Archbishop of Santa Fe to the Santa Fe Institute to writers to lawyers, performers, gang members. They all have the same response. I feel implicated in what I saw. What are we going to do? I can't get it out of my mind. I see this film. I got to see it a zillion times more to understand. Now you're talking to the director here, so I could be puffing it, but I don't think so. I've never, even with Koyaanisqatsi, which is phenomenal for me. Without that, this wouldn't be a Kitty Katsi. Compared to a film that's not even released yet, it's a whirlwind of activity coming at me from everywhere, all over the place.
Hmm.
young people being attracted like a magnet with their films from everywhere.
Hmm.
So I'm a lucky boy. I sit here and live in my world.
Hmm. Tell me a little about your world, because I'm seeing, I have always met you in person in Big Sur or Carmel. And tell me about the room you're in. It looks sort of like
Ah,
a storyboard behind you, but maybe it's not a storyboard. What is this space, and what are the images that are around you?
well, I have a clinical situation called mania. Some people have violent mania. Mine, you can look it up, is called scriptomania. I have to write everything that's on my body, on the table I work with, on the floor, on the walls. I have to see it because I know there are thousands of them. I know what everyone is, and these are just for this film. Okay, so my room is north, south, east, west. I sit here and I'm all over the world in my room. I know what I can. It's like my world headquarters in my head. So I visualize my head. And again, I'm not kidding you. I can tell you what anything is here, and it's changed 1,000 times over different projects. Same thing with the boards, there are hundreds of them. It's just the way I function. Let me make a call. Louder, louder. My assistant, come see. He wants to see the room. He wants to know, kind of give him a tour of the room, starting him out with that. Can you take a tour of the room?
That would be fine.
Hang in
And
there.
we'll send you something else as well.
Oh, wow, wow. That's the Big Apple.
Yeah,
You did yesterday.
The apple appears in your film.
that's right. It's called apple. It's Adam's apple. Eve didn't eat the apple. Adam did. We even have a thing called Adam's apple. We took all the myths and turned them on their heads, but you take him around the room now. He wants to see the room.
Wow, wow. It's it's really beautiful and amazing and surprising. I just assumed only the wall behind you looked like that, but your whole space is a collage.
Yes, it's like a, they're pictures I take and mostly drawings I make every day. It's a way to stay focused on what I'm doing. There's a Sanskrit word called ekagrata, one pointedness. Well, one point is not the pin how many angels can fit on it. It's one point, that's every point, everything in one, and the head up. From Powakatsi.
Wow, it's beautiful.
There's a lot to see.
There is a lot to see. Do you know, I play a lot of music, and sometimes I feel like I need to do that to it's a language or a physical activity too for me to express what's happening inside of me. And if I didn't have that, I'm not sure. Writing fulfills that in some ways, but music is more of a primary way of doing that. And again, another cliche, artists often say, if I didn't paint or write or make movies or make music, I would go crazy. Do you think that it fits for you that way too?
I listen to music all day long. At times, I get obsessed with music. I have music now of a Zen monk that he didn't even know he could make music that's blowing my mind. Or I listen to ranchero, or I listen to Middle Eastern, or I listen to jazz, or I listen to George Lewis. I listen to chant. I listen to all kinds of music. Linz, um, Prokofiev. Yeah, music is who we are.
Hmm.
That's why music goes directly to the soul, not through metaphor. That's why governments and churches want to control the music you have, because it's more powerful than anything they may say. It's patriotic or it's religious. It controls the narrative. Who we are is rhythm. So, for example, I'm a big fan of Joseph Brodsky, the poet. Now, when Brodsky, I love his essays. When I read his poetry, I like it. But when I hear it in Russian, which I don't really understand, I understand it better not knowing the word, but I get the rhythm of it, because when he reads it in English, he doesn't have that rhythm, which comes from the rhythm of Russia. So hearing it in Russian, I feel it more than hearing it in English.
Hmm.
Yes, I think, and then one can train their ear to what you hear. Like we can be in cities and not hear the traffic. We hear it, but we don't. Or in a restaurant where there's a cacophony of sound, you can pick up errant voices, but we don't. We're talking. In other words, we can do two things at once or more. Aristotle says we have something called the sensus commutus in Latin. What does that mean? That means, here's a contemporary example. You could be driving down the highway completely safe, knowing what's on all sides, keeping the distance, and your mind could be in Timbuktu. Your senses are in control. Right now, AI is taking control of your senses. All senses come through, all knowledge comes through the senses. We're sensate. If you control the environment, you control that. So that's being routinized. I mean, everything that we are is being replicated in a monstrous appetite for money. I know that sounds ridiculous, but money is power. You put it together, it's a Molotov cocktail. We've been warned about it forever. Can't say no.
Yeah, can't say no. I wanted to mention, because you mentioned half an hour ago Ivan Illich, and when we've spoken before, you've mentioned him a few times, and you've mentioned this idea of his that freedom comes from the ability to say no to a necessity,
That's
which
correct.
you never asked me to do this, but you telling me that has supported my action of not having a cell phone. I have never had
Ah,
a cell phone, and this drives my wife crazy and a handful of other people. But largely, this choice is working for me very well. And I think of this quote from Illich as helping me continue that. Um,
oh, Illich says exactly that. Freedom is the ability to say no to necessity, technological necessity. He also says we have the right to useful unemployment. We have the right to create our own world. He's just a genius guy. He's got it down.
So, what do you think? You know, there's a bit of a debate right now, or I should say more like a widespread panic about um, AI. And, for example, this chat GPT, you can put in a bunch of ideas and it'll shoot out a newspaper article or an essay or music. What's your feeling about the leaps that have happened with artificial intelligence recently?
Okay. First of all, it's not recent. It's been here for over 30 years. Hear what I'm saying? It's now because of a few weeks ago, it became an app that a child could buy. No image has veracity. Okay, that's one. Two, I think AI is a screen for those that are going to use it. Illich says, beware of radical monopolies, deschooling society, medical nemesis, energy inequity. He's saying that, of course, they'll do good things in medicine for us. Of course, they'll teach you so you don't have to be a worker all the time. And then that'll be the come on. and they'll do everything else and control you. So right now in Texas, for example, 2 days ago, the state of Texas had designed with AI a way not only to read your behavior like Apple and everybody else does. Everybody else is doing this, by the way, but they just leaped out first. They read your mind. They read it through chemistry. They read it through CRIs that we get when we go into the tube that we showed on Nakoikatsi or way back in the privacy campaign. They do all of that and they analyze all. Right now, they're able to say with 80% clarity what's in your mind and take that and turn it around. It's the corporation, it's the government, and they're going to be the first to come out and say, like traffic and whether we need control, because control gives them real control. And we think we're getting some. And that's what's happening with COVID, what's happening with schooling, everything. Kids now are more tuned into the gizmo since they've not been in school. So many of them are just not going to go to school no more. So it's an upside down world, insane. So I think our job is to be outsane. Our world is our range of relationships. We don't have to participate in nothing is clearer than example. And I'll use Colorado as the example, money again. Nobody wanted to have marijuana. It's the devil's weed. But as soon as they found out they could earn millions, all over the world, Saudi Arabia, everybody's into it. I just use that as an example. Any example that has veracity, as small as it is, can blossom out into the planet. That's the hope. Those that are willing to be hopeless about this world, Humpty Dumpty, so they may have the boldness to be hopeless about the world they want to create.
Yes, I agree. And I specifically noticed this about marijuana. 5 years ago in California, they were putting people in jail for possessing it. And
Yeah.
recently had a ballot measure where we voted on giving money that's coming from taxing marijuana sales to help the schools. There's not enough money for schools, so let's raise it by selling this stuff that 5 years ago was illegal.
Yeah, well, they let kids see anything on the net. Pornography is available to every kid, okay? Yet they want to get rid of drag performance because it's going to hurt the morality of the children. I mean, you can go on and on and on. It's all bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Hey,
bullshit. And you're in Silicon Valley, which is driving one of the big ships of bullshit by all these things that we need.
one of the images that has stuck with me the most from Once Within a Time is the chimpanzee wearing virtual reality goggles and then taking them off.
The chimpanzee is sentient. That's our closest relative that we know of. It's sentient. And she was looking at the world that we can't see anymore, or seeing it in a way that we refuse to see it. The children see it like her. They share that. Isley says, until you've been seen through the eyes of another animal, you've not seen yourself. And this is what we do. There are all kind of animals in this film, as there are children in the film. And children have been in all my films, every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
All the films are the same. They're just like making butter. It's going around the tree. This was a much thicker butter and much smaller because it's got a lot of intensity. So time is not about time, it's about intensity.
What do you envision next as you continue churning and putting your notes around and ideas?
Well, first of all, I have a group of mainly younger people, not exclusively, that are sending me genius work. So I look at it whenever they send it and give an immediate response.
Mm.
But more important, the film I wanted to make about the gangs after seeing Los Olvidados when I did Koyaanisqatsi. At the night of the opening of Koyaanisqatsi, Tisnao Filiberto Valdez, godfather in the barrio, my dearest friend, goes to the movie, and he goes afterwards to Mike V. Hill, who became a judge, and he says, gee whiz, that was a good movie, but I thought he was going to do a movie on the gangs. So Mike V. Hill, who's now a big judge, says, we're going to do a movie on the gangs. It's called Tisnao's Prophecy. That before Tisnao said that, I'm in touch with the gang members 5 generations now. And Sam Labor, who's a composer, a funny man, and a philosopher, is being the director. I'm his consigliere. PBS is already involved. We're going to do a Once Within a Time on the barrio, not because it was just a nice time of the year 1960 to 2000 using ranchero. It's that stuff popped out all over the world from this event, and it's relevant now. So it'll be humorous and tragic. It'll be to die for. We burnt down police stations and had pitched battles with the police and went to jail, and the nightsticks shove up our ass, and people being shot at, and big fiestas of 3,000 people. So all that's going down right now.
Mm.
And then keeping up with Once Within a Time, it's going to be a lot coming down.
Mm. When do you think you'll have that finished?
I can't say that because it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
But very soon they're going to put a frame around it and start to conjure it. I don't think we'll do it as a series. There'll be some prep for it, but it'll be done as a piece so it can stand on its own. Probably in the length of 90 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
And PBS has an apparatus that can send this all over the world.
Mm.
And they've already started filming.
Wow.
We had a big party here when we released the film at the Santa Fe Festival. That's the only of all the old guys, many of which wore ankle bracelets, and it was a scene. All the old folks here,
Mm.
several hundred.
Wow, wow. Mm. You
So
know,
it's
you,
all connected, is what I'm saying. It's very connected.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that clearly through all of your films and your activism.
Well, my work with kids was all about starting out with street gangs as a Christian brother and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We take vows to teach the poor gratuitously as a brother.
Mm.
Yeah, the Christian Brothers were a big. Without the Christian Brothers, I couldn't be now Brother Godfrey. They did throw me out. I was exclaustrated. That's a long story. I had final vows, but I'm forever thankful. Without them, I couldn't have still be Brother Godfrey.
Mm-hmm.
I just put my vows in a different way.
You, Godfrey, you look now more like Brother Godfrey than I have ever seen. Your beard is really rich and full, and your cap, you look beautiful.
Well, I don't have any teeth anymore. My eyes are going bad. I have cancers. I don't feel my feet. Yet my mind is cooking on I don't know what. So I'm a lucky boy.
Mm-hmm. I'm lucky too that I've been able to spend time with you and talk directly with you and hear your ideas. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Well, it's been a long time. We've been together a long time. I remember the days when I went to Carmel and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I relish those times. Can I ask you one more thing, Godfrey?
Sure, please.
It's about the significance of indigenous culture and Native American ways, you know, Koyaanisqatsi, Powakatsi, Nakoikatsi, these are words that have meaning in the Navajo language and life out of balance. And you've talked about that plenty in the past. Um, this movie, Once Within a Time, there's one image that stood out for me with the laughing, delighted children who are looking at the camera and then backing up into some sort of teepee or I'm not sure.
Oh, right. They're on the North Pole.
I thought it was like Eskimo or somewhere very
Right.
cold. Um, these days, I'd say when the pandemic started, there was some huge impulse to not return to normal as we knew it, but we need to really address all of our social institutions and our histories, histories of genocide, and then sort of set out a new trajectory about how do we want to live in association with the earth. And a lot of people are saying, hey, let's take a look at how people used to do it. They got along for thousands of years and lived in harmony with each other, sometimes not always with each other, and in harmony with the earth. So there is some recognition that native ways are healthier. And your films, you know, obviously they're not answer films, they're question films, but you do point to this possibility too, I think.
So let me explain. I see Native Americans as primitive radicals. Primitive radicals. They've been around. We've been around arguably 200 to 300,000 years. Our brains have gotten no bigger. We were as smart then as we are now. We have different tools, so we become the tools that we work with. They were healthier then. There were less wars. It wasn't perfect. To be human is to be imperfect. Um, so that's who we are. That's why in choosing a title for the film, when I chose Koyaanisqatsi, crazy life, a way of life that calls for another way of living, life out of balance, life in turmoil, those are descriptions that are not accessible in our civilized language. They're not accessible. So they have the clarity of an insight that comes from the culture of orality that has been passed down one to the other, one to the other. And that's something I trust. So, for example, um, I learned from them and from my own, however it came to me, that if I wanted to criticize technology, I had to use technology to criticize it. It's fire with fire. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. You do it to burn it down, not to celebrate it. So it's not for lack of love of the language. It's that our language no longer describes the world. But as you can see in my room, everything is predicated on the word made flesh. This is what Hopis do when they give us terms like Koyaanisqatsi, Powakatsi, a black magician through allurement that takes the life of another person. Does that implicate, does that indicate, as it does to me, the predation of the North on the South? Food, where we put our toxicities, our pharmaceuticals, the gold, all the resources there, and we predate upon it. It's we we are to be human is to be a predator. The first images of human being are with the male with the spear and the woman with the net. We're both predators. But the beauty of that predation is that the eaten and the eater are one. They have enormous respect for each other. I'm not talking about killing millions of turkeys in a factory or anything like that. but we are predators. We should realize who we are and celebrate it. In that sense, we're all animistic. It's only humans, as far as we know, that are conscious of the ability to have a soul and to know that we have a soul. Everything has a soul, but to be conscious of it, the human is the only one that bury their dead. The elephants try, but they can't get it deep enough. There's one other animal. We do that because we believe there's a soul. And we know there's a soul that's in all of nature, but we have consciousness of it. So that, that's our brilliance and our flaw. What Homer said, fire, their brilliance, their flaw. So it's all of these contradictions which then resolve in complexity rather than chaos if we're smart. And I think Hopis or native radicals, while they might appear reactionary to us, we need reactionary activity now to go back to a route that worked better than anything we've developed. So yes, I'm a reactionary. God bless me.
I'm so happy to talk with you and see you inspired and continuing. And I love your films and I love your ideas, and even this clarity around we live in a time of complexity, not chaos. Thank you
Right.
for reminding me of that.
I believe that. I mean, others will have a different point of view, but I forget who says it, but the second you freeze something to measure it, you change it. It's gone already. Nothing stays the same.
Yes.
Okay.
Godfrey, thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.
I'm
Really
so grateful to have this time with you again, and thanks to Laura for helping set it up. And I'm glad you're doing really good. It's so good to see you.
thanks for your family too. Bye bye
Thank
now.
you. Thank you, Godfrey. Bye.
Bye.